Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. It is FPC Radio Live. It's Thursday, January the 18th. We're just a couple days away from the divisional round of the NFL playoff, which is traditionally what people call the best round, the best weekend in football. I don't know. I think that's obviously there's a lot of hype to that, but traditionally you would think that the divisional round features the very best teams and the most matchups of the very best teams that we're going to get all season. Because after this, there's only a few games left, John. 3 games after this. That's it. So we're kind of racing towards the end of the season, which will be here in just a few weeks, under a month now.
Yeah, the divisional round used to be the best weekend of football. You know, I go back to 2003, if you remember the Patriots-Tennessee game.
Oh, sure.
Frigid cold at Gillette Stadium. That was a phenomenal game. But you think of it now is it's a little more stretched out because now you've got 7 teams from each conference. So Green Bay, Houston, and Tampa Bay pulled off surprises last week, right? So they're coming into this game with a lot of momentum, but not necessarily maybe at the talent level that you would expect. So now you see 2 of the games have 9.5 point spread: San Francisco over Green Bay, Baltimore over Houston. Detroit is a 6.5, 7-point favorite over Tampa. And the marquee matchup of the weekend is obviously Kansas City and Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
Buffalo's a 2.5 point favorite at home. That's the one that I think has the potential to be the best game because we saw it a couple of years ago when they had a divisional round matchup in Kansas City, which went to overtime with the Chiefs winning. So that probably is the game that most likely will be back and forth and could be a great game, but you never know. I mean, one team could blow out the other, and next, Tampa and Detroit give us the most entertainment this weekend. But the matchups are intriguing because you got young quarterbacks, right? Like Jordan Love, and,
right?
C.J. Stroud in Houston. Those are the 2 guys that are coming off phenomenal weekends in the wild card round. So we want to see if they can continue that play up against better teams this weekend.
Who do you give more of a shot to, Green Bay or Houston?
Oh, boy. Well, I'm going to think that Green Bay has a better running game than Houston, so they have at least something else to fall back on if the quarterback struggles. I don't give either one really a chance because obviously Baltimore and San Francisco look like the 2 best teams. They've got the bye. They, are expected to meet in the Super Bowl. Doesn't necessarily mean that's going to happen. I would say Green Bay only because of their ability to run the football a little better than Houston. At least they'll have some help for the young quarterback. But I would say so. To me, again, this is a game where the Packers have lost 4 straight playoff games to San Francisco, and they had Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. If they ever pull off this upset, that's going to be a major hit to his legacy. Look, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, top 10 quarterback of all time. But yeah, to see Green Bay finally beat San Francisco without him after losing 4 times with him at quarterback would be a knock against his legacy.
Well, and this is, I mean, certainly based on how the league is covered and how narratives are drawn. I mean, obviously, you're not going to sit there and look at one. And I apologize, folks, for the noise in the background. Can you hear that, John? Can you hear that?
Oh, sure.
Oh, sure. You know what? It was going good for a little bit, but hey.
Are you going to be like Testikov? You're going to throw your equipment out the window?
No. I do not do that.
I can't stand the noise.
The beeping. No, if it was beeping, maybe it'd be a little bit different. But no, I mean, look, it would be silly to make any sort of proclamations about Jordan Love based on one season against Aaron Rodgers, even if they do win. But you know how things are going to go, and that's how it's covered. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, just because of the running game. Although, again, I don't know. I mean, I might actually say Houston might have a better opportunity because, I mean, if you're going to talk about players and teams that have the most pressure on them, I mean, Baltimore's got to be up there, and Lamar Jackson, and you have C.J. Stroud and this Houston team that's really been playing not carefree in a bad way, but like carefree in a they've exceeded expectations. They've emerged on the scene. They've played very well. Certainly when C.J. Stroud's been under center. So if you're going to tell me Houston's going to go in and upset Baltimore, I'd be like, yeah, because you know what? it the reality of it is, John, this Houston team's probably better than what their record is because they lost games when CJ Stroud was out. And they dealt with some injuries to some of their better players, Tank Dell being one of them. So are they a seventh seed? Yeah, absolutely. But are they really a seventh seed? Probably not. Or I'm sorry, not a seventh seed, but like, are they a team that they should be looked at as a lesser? No, I think they'd probably be right up there in the mix had they had CJ Stroud this whole season and he hadn't missed a couple games. So I would probably actually honestly say Houston probably has the better opportunity, although I'd give either of these teams a shot. I would never say neither of them have it, don't have a shot. Although I think San Francisco is far more, I think you can put a lot more confidence in San Francisco given their recent history and their ability to win playoff games as opposed to Baltimore, who, they have won in the Lamar Jackson era.
Yeah, and also it just seems like a difficult matchup for Green Bay. I remember 2 years ago in the divisional round when Green Bay was hosting San Francisco, and I think San Francisco was like 10-7. They got into the playoffs in Week 18. Then they upset the Cowboys, and I was like, okay, this is a tough matchup for Green Bay. It's just a tough matchup. But Kyle Shanahan and Matt LaFleur are friends, right? So, but Matt LaFleur kind of coached under Kyle Shanahan back in Washington when they had this group of really talented young assistants, including Robert Saleh and Sean McVay. I mean, it was quite a staff they had there in Washington. So it almost seems like San Francisco does what Green Bay does in terms of scheme, but they just do it better. So that's difficult to make up that difference. And you're right about Houston. I mean, they were 10-7, and look, it's fashionable to call the AFC South a weak division. It's not quite as bad as the NFC South. I mean, the worst team in the AFC South is Tennessee, and they knocked Jacksonville out of playoff contention in Week 18. And look, Indianapolis battled throughout the year. And Houston, like you said, they lost C.J. Stroud for a couple of games. Maybe they're an 11-6 team instead of a 10-7 team. Who knows? Maybe they're the 2 seed instead of the 4 seed. So, yeah, they really stepped up and won some big games. Won a big game on the road against Cincinnati when Joe Burrow was healthy. So I got to say that, Houston has kind of proven its worth so far this year. And in the first week of the playoffs, even their defense looked darn good with the 2 pick sixes against Joe Flacco.
Yeah, and again, I mean, this team, I think, again, is a perfect example of being better than what their record is. So I don't think this would be a massive upset. Although, again, Baltimore has played great all season and probably the most consistently in the AFC, and it's not going to be an easy matchup for anyone, let alone a team that's getting their first taste of playoff success and all that with CJ Stroud, a new head coach, and DeMeco Ryans and everything like that. So, yeah, I mean, look, it'll be interesting. Same can be said about, we talk about that Lions Buccaneers game. Honestly, that's a game that could be incredibly unpredictable. We know the Lions are certainly capable of putting up great offense, but they are capable of playing down to their opponent sometimes and playing a little too close. You know what I mean? And I think Tampa is one of those teams that I think you're getting the very most you're going to get out of Baker Mayfield, which is great because it means Tampa's winning football games. I just don't know how much longer you're going to get it. You know what I mean? And maybe that's not fair to Baker Mayfield. And look, I think he's had a great season. But I think you're absolutely tapping the most potential out of Baker Mayfield this season. Do you agree with that?
Sure. Yeah, no, he had a really get right season for himself, and he can go back into the open market in the offseason and make himself a lot of money.
Oh,
especially
sure.
What he did last week in beating Philadelphia. He looked in complete control of that game. I mean, you can make a case that he may have been the most impressive quarterback last weekend, and there were quite a few of them. Obviously, C.J. Stroud, Jordan Love. I thought Matt Stafford and Jared Goff both played really well. Josh Allen was a force. I mean, like the quarterback on the winning side, and this is why the teams won, all played pretty well, right? So you got to give Baker a lot of credit for that. Can he string together a group of games to get his team further along in the playoffs? That's always been an issue because he can be prone to turnovers. Although this year he took care of the football much better. He's got nice weapons there, right? And Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. He's got a good offense around him. And like you said, Detroit their offense has been pretty consistent all year. It's one of the best offenses in football, but their defense, which can force some turnovers, it can rush the passer, but can also get lit up upon. I mean, look what the Rams did. They were running free in the secondary for most of that game. They just kind of tightened up a little bit in the red zone, or they may have won that game. So yeah, that's kind of the weird game, right? Because we talk about who's facing the most pressure. Like, I think Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen are facing more pressure than any of the quarterbacks, and Kyle Shanahan among the coaches.
Oh,
but
sure.
This thing's set up for Kyle Shanahan to win the Super Bowl, and he's come close before. So those are the three guys that face the most pressure. But you look at Detroit, Tampa, like, I think both of those teams are going to play pretty carefree. I mean, Detroit wants to get to the NFC Championship game for the first time in 32 years. That would be quite an accomplishment for them. Tampa's really, going to go in there probably pretty loose. It's in a dome. That has the potential to be a fairly high-scoring game.
Yeah, and like I said, when that happens, I mean, flip a coin. Honestly, like, would it surprise me a little bit if Tampa won? Absolutely, but not to the degree of like, oh my God, I can't believe it. It's just the matchups. Like, if Tampa goes in and drew San Francisco, I wouldn't give them a chance. Like, I just wouldn't. I would be like, no, this San Francisco's going to roll right over them, and they very may well roll over Green Bay. That's wouldn't shock me either. But I do think, based on how Green Bay and particularly Jordan Love has played, I do think it's going to be a pretty decent game. I do think San Francisco, and we'll do our picks officially tomorrow, but I do think San Francisco is going to win that game. I just, like I said, I don't know if Tampa could have given San Francisco a good matchup. I think San Francisco would have just kind of had their way with them, so to speak. But yeah, and to your point, like you said earlier, obviously Buffalo, Kansas City is the marquee matchup of the weekend, and it's Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes. They're 3-3 against each other, regular season and postseason, obviously. Buffalo, this is their opportunity. They have home field advantage. You can argue that they have a better team. Josh Allen is probably playing quarterback better. I mean, although again, you're splitting hairs here between these two guys. So this is Buffalo's opportunity to finally get to that AFC Championship game. And look, I think if they get over this Kansas City hump, they're going to be feeling pretty good going up against whoever that they end up facing, whether it's Baltimore or Houston.
Yeah, this has been difficult for them in the past, right? 2020, they lose the AFC Championship game at Kansas City. It was a blowout. They got an early lead, and then Kansas City took care of business after that. And then, of course, the memorable game in the divisional round from 2 years ago, which Kansas City won in overtime. One of the best, again, divisional round games we've seen in the last, 10, 15 years. So they've got to kind of break through with this to see if they can finally beat Kansas City. And they do have home field advantage. Got to check the weather. Both of these teams can survive in inclement weather. They play in a lot of inclement weather, although I still maintain Buffalo's not built for that. They're more of a passing team, not necessarily a power running team. It's more about Josh Allen. Sometimes I think that they play better in better weather than in inclement weather, and that's why when they build a new stadium, it's going to have a retractable roof or a roof because it kind of fits their team. But yeah, this is the big matchup of the weekend, and can Buffalo do it? And if they do, will they be flat the next week? I don't think so, but you never know with football teams. It's a very emotional sport. Will they have enough left to go into, say, Baltimore and beat the Ravens in the AFC Championship game? That's going to be determined if that, in fact, is a matchup. But, yeah, this is the wall they have to break through, and Kansas City is vulnerable. You can't count them out as the defending champs, and they know how to win, and you got to give them credit for that.
Yeah, and there's no better example of Philadelphia earlier this season having that big win over Kansas City and then going 1-6 the rest of the way. That and again, that one win was shaky at best. Buffalo, they very well could be a victim of that as well. You put all this energy into winning this big game, and then all of a sudden, the following week, you just don't have the same motivation or whatever. But for this Buffalo team, I think they've won a lot of big games against a lot of good teams over the last couple of months. So I'm not too worried about that. I think there's going to be some getting the monkey off your back type of feeling. But I don't think it's going to sit there and linger too long, because I do feel like the failures of the past, John, I think are going to come into play here in a positive way for Buffalo. If they can win this game, I think they're going to recognize that, yeah, this is a nice feeling, but they've been there before. They've almost tasted a trip to the Super Bowl. I don't think they want to see that slip away again. So, yeah, it's going to be a big relief for them. But at the same time, I think, given what they've gone through this year and some of the failures of years past, I think it's going to help them kind of offset that feeling and keep themselves focused.
Yeah, this is about them, right? I mean, Kansas City, look, they've won 2 Super Bowls in the last 4 years. If they don't win it this year, they'll be back next year. We'll see what their team looks like. There's still pressure on them because they would like to go back to back from the first team in 20 years to do that. But like I said, I think the pressure is on Buffalo, Baltimore, specifically Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. And over in the NFC, it's all about Kyle Shanahan. I think if the 49ers fall short, it's probably not going to fall on Brock Purdy because he's not considered one of those elite quarterbacks. Yeah. It's going to fall more on the coach, who has a slight of arrogance to him that makes it sound like he could just take me or you and turn us into quarterbacks that can win a Super Bowl.
Well, I was going to say in Buffalo, I mean, Sean McDermott might have almost as much pressure on him as Josh Allen, because I think even if Buffalo fails, I think there's going to be plenty of people that are going to sit there and say, like, yeah, maybe Josh Allen threw an interception or there was a couple turnovers or whatever. But it's very clearly either Josh Allen or bust for this Buffalo offense. And I think, some of the things that Sean McDermott has gone through this year, I think the silly 9/11 stuff, it's ammunition for anyone who wants to paint him in a negative light. And look, his coaching hasn't, we've been kind of critical of his coaching, this season. And I think in the past as well. So, it's certainly not, he's not immune to criticism. And again, if Buffalo falls flat again, I feel like maybe there might be more pressure, honestly, on, like, I agree, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson have the most pressure on them as players, but I actually think Sean McDermott might actually have more pressure on him than Josh Allen in this sense. Like, if there's a failure, I think Sean McDermott is the first scapegoat in all this.
Well, when they lost to Kansas City 2 years ago, Josh Allen played nearly a perfect game.
Like, exactly.
Beyond at a high level, right? I mean, he should have won that game. Both quarterbacks were phenomenal that night. I mean, that was just so entertaining to watch, and it fell on Sean McDermott. How he handled the final 13 seconds. Should it be squib kicked instead of just kicking into the end zone? What exactly are you doing defending Kelsey in that situation where he gave him so much open room to set up the game tying field goal? That falls on Sean McDermott. And again, he's going to run out of excuses, right? Because, okay, it was on the defense last year, so he doesn't bring back Leslie Frazier as his defensive coordinator. The offense is all sorts of wonky early in the season, so he moves on from Ken Dorsey, and now you've got Brady as the offensive coordinator, not Tom Brady, Joe Brady.
Maybe it should be Tom Brady.
Maybe Tom could come in there and call some plays. Why not? It probably would work. But if it doesn't work, then what does he do next? Does he fire the special teams coach?
Right.
At some point, it falls on the head coach.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I think ultimately, barring a catastrophically bad performance by Josh Allen, I think if they don't win this game, I think much of the heat's going to go toward Sean McDermott. And I said too before the wild card game, if this team happened to flame out, Bill Belichick might be their best option in such a short window that I think they have right now. And I wouldn't even necessarily write that off if they, again, kind of fall flat. Like, I mean, if they go into and have this game, hosting this game against Kansas City, and they get blown out, I would not put it past ownership to make a move at head coach, because what else are you going to do, John? Especially if you think you can get a guy like Belichick, who is perhaps the difference maker in getting that team, a Buffalo team that's very talented, over the hump. And as we know, Jerry Jones is sticking with Mike McCarthy, so his other best option, in my opinion, of the current and most recently eliminated playoff teams. The Dallas Cowboys is obviously not there. So, again, if Buffalo gets blown out this weekend, all that heat, I think, is going to go on Sean McDermott, and there might be pressure to make a move with Belichick out there.
Yeah, I mean, this precedent for something like this, Clark Judge might be the only person that will remember this one. But, between 1973 and 1977, the Rams went to the playoffs like every single year. And every year they were picked to go to the Super Bowl. And every year they disappointed. And they moved on from Chuck Knox after 5 really successful seasons. And they moved to actually George Allen, who then retired before the season started, and Ray Malavasi took over in 1978. I'm sorry for the history lesson, but sometimes people say, well, he's gone to the playoffs 5 straight years and he, has a really good team. Well, at some point, ownership's going to say they've spent more money on their payroll than any other team in football. I believe their payroll's around $300 million for this year. At some point, the owner's going to say, well, it's on the coach. We put together the pieces there. We've got the quarterback. It's on the coach. So, yeah, I mean, if they lose this game, I wouldn't be shocked if they move on from Sean McDermott. Absolutely. They run out of excuses at that point.
Yeah, and again, with a guy like Belichick out there, I know, he's older, but this Bills team really doesn't have a big window. This isn't a long for the future Bills team. I mean, you have to realize that and understand that, like, yeah, maybe it is, a short term situation. Maybe he does only coach for a couple years, but it's enticing for him because it gives him a chance to get that wins record. But it's also a good team, a team that could win a Super Bowl and ultimately could be limited by their coaching and maybe need a new voice to get them over that hump. So we'll see. But like I said, Dallas is off the table for Bill Belichick. So perhaps Buffalo is that team if they get eliminated. A lot of things have to happen for that to happen, but we'll see. So anyways, excuse me, that's going to do it for us here today. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll give our picks for the weekend and tell you who's going to go to conference championship weekend and be playing for the right to go to the Super Bowl. So exciting stuff. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.